So at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you which of these 4 bags I went with, but I'm going to start off by telling you why I didn't go with the other bags. The IX.The Continental. The fact that really the only way I could fit into this bag was to expand it to the 38-liter size, which then pushed it past the 9-inch mark in terms of the depth that a carry-on bag can have before it's not considered to be a carry-on and you have to check it. And in fact, when I did go to try to pack this bag up with the stuff that I typically would carry with me on a 4-day trip, I had to expand it, and it was huge. When this thing was filled and I was carrying it, it is probably the least comfortable of the 4 packs for a couple reasons. One, because of its design. Again, going back to how deep it is, it was carrying a lot of the weight far away from my back. It had nothing to do with how I was packing it. I always pack the same way. I put the heavy stuff closer to my back. But because this bag is relatively small and the only way that it can expand is away from my back, it made it a much heavier feeling load, especially when you compare it to the other bags. Furthermore, the suspension system, if you recall, these buckle attachment points here are set too close for my body. And of course, I'm 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, but if you're my size or bigger, you're gonna feel these buckles here, these attachment points right against your kidneys, and that's gonna drive you crazy after carrying this thing for about a mile or so. It is a bit too casual looking, given what I was looking for. I want something that, on the spectrum of very casual and sporty, all the way to very professional looking, I want something that's more towards the professional looking side of things. And this one is slightly towards the more sporty side. The main compartment has zipper covers. The organizing panel, you have to get past zipper covers to deal with. And lastly, getting into the laptop compartment, you have a zipper cover. I just wish that IX.The had decided to forego the zipper covers. Of course, it does look nice when everything's all zipped up and the covers are over the top. But in terms of usability, it really does make it a hindrance to get into and access stuff inside of your pack. Lastly, the fact that it doesn't have the option to have a waist belt, or even more so to have a full padded hip belt, which would have done a lot to carry this load, I think. But the fact is, it doesn't have it, which makes this already uncomfortable load carrying pack even that much worse. The Manal Carry-On 2.0, and so this also didn't make it. Number one, the lack of an organizing panel on the front really killed it for me. There are these 2 huge pockets that you have up top, but frankly, having 2 large pockets made it really difficult for me to organize all my stuff. Granted, I'm probably a little bit OCD about wanting to organize things and know predictably where they are inside of a pocket, but it really made it very difficult. I had to put so much stuff into these 2 pockets here because there frankly isn't any other room anywhere else in this pack. So I had to utilize these pockets, which meant that all my cables and dongles and batteries and everything were all mixed up and jumbled together into a big mess here. The volume for these 2 pockets is competing for the same volume as your main compartment. I didn't dare put my sunglasses into these 2 little pockets because I was afraid, since there was no give, that it actually might snap them. So not having a place where I could safely put something as fragile as my sunglasses was a huge bummer for me. Another strike against the Manal, and you'll notice this just by looking at it in its empty state, it looks a heck of a lot like a raisin when it's not filled. And if you recall, I was trying to get away with trying to use a single bag, not only for my travel bag, but also to convert it into my daily carry once I got to my destination. And this bag, it looks like a mess when it's not filled. Of course, they're not touting this as a daily carry. They actually have a smaller bag that they market for being a daily carry bag. But for me, in my circumstances, what I was looking for, this wasn't going to cut it. The laptop holding compartment, it's a little bit fussy to use. I just sort of want a pocket that I can slide it into. They've over-engineered it in my estimation, and it made it sort of a difficult process. You need to use two hands to insert your laptop in here because you need one hand to pull away the neoprene sort of trampoline, and then the other hand is obviously holding your laptop as you insert it in there. I really just would have preferred a nice loose open pocket that I could sit my laptop or my tablet into. And then perhaps the significant strike against this Manal is that it is well made, but it is by far the most expensive of the packs that I reviewed. So I'm down to 2 packs, and obviously the next one I pull out to say that I'm rejecting, you're going to know who the winner is, so maybe you can just skip ahead. But I just want to make sure that I tell you why it is that this beautiful Air travel pack didn't become the pack that I went with. I think one of the things that I came to realize is really a nice feature of all these bags, except for the Air, is the ability to tuck away or pack away the shoulder straps so that this thing becomes much easier to move around with as a duffel bag like thing. Furthermore, the fact that, similar to the Mountainsmith, there's no way that you can have a hip belt for this guy, or a padded hip belt, or even a waist belt would be nice. When you're carrying something that has 35 liters worth of space, this bag is going to be pretty heavy. And if it's pretty heavy, you want to make sure that you can carry most of that weight on your hips and only some of the weight on your shoulders. So the fact that you don't have that option for this, having a sort of a removable padded waist belt, really takes away from this pack's ability to be usable to me. I would also say that this bag is incredibly well made, but as a result of how well made it is, it's incredibly stiff, and perhaps stiffer than it needs to be. There are foam walls that encircle the sides, the top, and the bottom of this bag. And while that's really nice in terms of allowing this bag to maintain its structure, I mean, the thing always looks good even when it's not filled. The problem you have is that, one, you lose volume in the main compartment, but two, it makes this bag incredibly stiff to compress down. Related to these buckles here, I think Air really could have done a better job had they decided, instead of making this thing open clamshell where the hinge is on the bottom here, they could have made it open like a book. So have the hinge on the side here. What that would have done is it would have eliminated the need to have these buckles on this side, right? You could have had just simple compression straps here with, I guess they're sort of like ladder fasteners to tighten these things up. In fact, the same ladder fasteners, if that's what you call them, that you have here. There's no, notice, real buckle here. It's just the fastener that allows you to pull in and it locks it in place. They could have done that on, say, this side right here, right? And then every time that you go to get into the main compartment, you wouldn't have to unclip all 4 of these compression straps, which is what you have to do now since the hinge is on the bottom. So if they had put the hinge here and had the opening here and had it open like a book, I think that would have simplified things tremendously. It would have eliminated the need for us to have to undo every single one of these compression straps to get access. The handle on the top, it's sort of over-engineered here. Yes, you do need to have a handle on the top, but so infrequently do you carry the bag by the handle on the top that I think it would have been better had they just used a simple piece of webbing. And in fact, if they had affixed that piece of webbing to the back of the bag here, that would allow you then to hang this on a doorknob or onto the hook on the side of a wall, whatever it would be. But having it here in the middle makes it very difficult to hang this bag up. The other problem that you have with this handle is that it makes it very hard to compress it. And if you saw in my, I think it's video number 3 in this series, it sort of made it bulge at the top as a result when you tried to compress this bag down, because this here, this handle, simply got in the way. And then lastly, this funny pocket that we have on the bottom for the shoes, I think it's strangely implemented. And in fact, I think it would have been just as good to have made this pocket here go into the main compartment of the bag, and that's where you would have been able to put your shoes. Sort of lay them next to each other inside the volume. It would be the same thing, except the bag would expand from the front into the interior of the bag rather from the bottom going up into the interior of the bag. As it is, this pocket here to me is largely useless. It's really shallow, it has some volume to it, but you can't put anything in there that's in any way fragile, because that's a pretty vulnerable place. To put something at the very bottom of the bag where you're constantly putting the bag on the ground doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. However, having this be the opening for your shoes makes total sense. And I would have not even worried about trying to give us another pocket on the front. After all, you have this giant sized pocket here, plus the beautiful panel behind here for organizing. Sadly, even though I love the way this bag looks and it works in so many ways, this dude is out of the running. And that leaves us with one bag to rule them all. Let me first talk a little bit about the things about it that actually made me think twice about making this the bag. It's big. There's no doubt about that. And when I thought about this bag, if it had come in a 35-liter size, this bag would have been the one. The fact that it was the 45-liter size really made me hesitate. In the end, it turned out that that actually isn't as big a deal as I thought it would be, but certainly it is a big bag. The organizing panel on the front, it's great to have, but it's kind of uninspiring. There's not a lot going on here. Compare this to the organizing panel on the Air, which is the best organizing panel of all these, and you can see that this sort of falls short. So the other thing about the Tortuga is that it does look a little floppy and loose when it's being used as a daily carry, which again is sort of absurd that I'm asking this bag to do this because it's a huge bag. But that's what I'm looking for. And so if you looked at the Air or even the Mount Smith, those two looked really good as daily carries. And the Manal looked terrible. And I would say that this Tortuga here is somewhere in between in terms of how it looks as a daily carry because of how floppy it is. Another funny oversight here is that both the Manal and the Air have load lifters on the top of the shoulder straps, which allow you to be able to hold the bag and fit it to you much better under load. The fact that this is the biggest bag, it has the best hip belt for sure of all four, and yet it is missing the load lifters. That seems like a strange thing. And lastly, the thing that I don't love about this pack is this water bottle pocket. It's huge, that's convenient for sure, but it's a little bit too shallow for its width. It doesn't really hold the bottle as securely as I had hoped it would hold it. Certainly not nearly as nicely as the Air holds its water bottle. Don't forget that the Air has a zippered compartment, unzips, opens up, it's super tight, it holds my water bottle securely. This guy doesn't do this as securely. Okay, so what is it about this pack that made me ultimately go with it? By far, number one, it has the most comfortable suspension system when you include the hip belt. If it's not, without the hip belt, it actually isn't that great. But the hip belt makes this thing altogether in a different class. Without hip belt, if you were just to go with comfort with the shoulder straps and how well it carries the load, the Manal is better. And that's because the Manal is a lower profile pack, as well as I think just the design of the shoulder straps is better. Once you include the hip belt, however, this Tortuga is the best one of the four. Speaking of that hip belt, the fact that the hip belt has those pockets associated with it, which are large size pockets that can contain a lot of stuff, that is a huge plus. I can imagine running through the airport, having my phone and my wallet on my hip belt, and being able to access those things without having to take the pack off. That's enormously convenient. Because of its giant size, this thing is incredibly versatile. It's super easy to pack. And then once you pack it, if you don't fill it all the way, you can so easily cinch it down and make it a much smaller volume pack. So in fact, its versatility really gives it big points here. I also think that this has the right look to it. If you look at the Air when it's empty as a daily carry, it looks a little funky. If you think about the Manal looks great when it's filled. It's by far the best looking pack when it's full, and yet it looks terrible when it's empty. So the Tortuga is somewhat in between there. It looks okay when it's empty, and it looks okay when it's filled. These zippers are awesome. They're so incredibly smooth that it makes unloading the pack as well as taking things out a dream. You may recall from video number 3 where I was compressing these bags. This guy can compress nearly flat because of the way that it's designed here and because of how flexible the material is. Don't forget that with the Air pack, because of all the foam that was in there, it was really hard to compress it down, as well as the handle. This thing has no resistance to compression. Now, it does look like a huge platter on your back. I'm not going to deny that. But at least from its profile, it's going to be one of the thinnest packs to use as a daily carry. Again, if this thing had been in a 35-liter pack size, and you could trim sort of an inch here and an inch there off of this thing, it wouldn't look quite as much like a huge platter on your back. That would have made this thing so perfect that it wouldn't have taken me so long to make the decision to go with this guy. The suspension system on this packs away so nice and easily. Perhaps it's not as easy as the Manal, which has a whole cover that goes on top of it, and you don't even have to worry about unhooking things and sliding things in. But it's still pretty stinking easy to make sure that this thing packs away and then can convert into a duffel bag-like form if you need it to. And then lastly, this bag is a great value. It's not as cheap as the Mountain Smith. I mean, I'm amazed that the Mountain Smith is as inexpensive as it is. But at $200, it's easily the best deal of the bunch. So if we take the Mountain Smith, that's $130. This guy comes in at $200. The Air is $220. And the Manal is $300. So this is a great deal, especially given what you get for this pack and how well it works for me. So this is it. This is the Champion. This is the one I'll be taking with me. I hope this entire series helped you and that you'll be able to make a decision faster than I did as a result of all the information I passed on to you.